Hopefully you have watched example 2 and you fully understand how to solve quadratics by completing the square when your coefficient of x squared is 1. Now we're going to move on to where my coefficient is a different number here. So step 1 says, if the coefficient of x squared is 1, go on to step 2. None of these are going to apply. So this actually says, otherwise divide both sides of the equation by the coefficient of x squared. So what they mean by that is they want you to divide everything here by 3, which you could do on that one. You need to divide everything here by 2, which makes that one a little bit more tricky. And then divide everything here by 4, which makes that one a little bit tricky. But because our goal here is to be able to complete the square so that we can manipulate our general equations and our conic sections into a better equation and not really actually to solve, I'm going to apply that step a little bit different. So here's what we're going to do. We still want to isolate all terms to one side. So now I need ax squared plus bx equals c. So you can see here what I need to do is move that over. So I have 3x squared plus 6x equals 33. Now, before I go on to this step here, I need to pull that number out. Now, when you look at these two here, the actual GCF is 3x, right? You can divide both of these by 3 and divide it x out, but I want to leave the x's alone. So all I'm going to do here is pull out a 3. So that leaves me with x squared plus 2x. Now I'm going to leave some room equals 33. Now I can go on to step 2. You've got to pull that number out though, so that this will be 1x squared. So now we will apply this one, and that is our b over 2 squared. And remember, we're going to add that to both sides. So my b over 2 squared this is my b now. So we have 2 over 2 squared, which is 1 squared, which gives me 1. So I'm going to add in 1 right here. Now here is where we will make the most mistakes in problems like these. What I do to one side, I must do to the other, right? We underlined both. But I did not add 1 to the left. I want you to pause this video. And I want you to think about, what did I actually add to this left side? Okay, hopefully you already have an answer, or you have had time to pause the video and think this through. What I have actually added over here is 3. If you distribute this 3 in, you get 3 times x squared gets me back to 3x squared. 3 times 2x gets me back to 6x. And now 3 times 1 gets me to 3. So be careful that those are going to look like they mismatch. Okay, so now let's factor. And this will still factor to x plus or minus, I'll just put plus b over 2 squared. So here, what multiplies to 1 and adds up to 2 is going to be 1 and 1. So again, this is matching this. And then on this side, we have 36. Now here, before I can use my square root property, or before I can take the square root, I don't have the squared term by itself. This is 3 times my squared term. So now I need to divide by 3, which will leave me with x plus 1 squared equals 12. And now I can take the square root. So my square root and square cancel here. So I'm left with x plus 1 equals, I'm going to have the plus or minus. And now let's simplify the square root of 12. That's 4 and 3, which is 2 and 2. So we get plus or minus 2 square root 3. And the last step to get x by itself is to subtract by 1. So we get x equals -1 plus or minus 2 square root 3. Okay, let's try again on B, and then I advise you to pause the video and try on C. So on C, I need to get this into the right form first. So I need to move this over. So I have 2x squared minus 8x equals 5. Okay, now I need to deal with this coefficient in front of my x squared. So luckily these are both divisible by 2. I'm going to pull that 2 out. And now I'm going to leave some room. Let's figure out what we're putting into that blank here. So we have b over 2 squared. My b is -4. -4 divided by 2 is -2. And -2 in parentheses squared is 4. So I'm adding in 4 here. But what am I actually adding over here? I am actually adding in 8. 2 times that 4. So now let's factor. What multiplies to 2 and adds up to -4 is x minus 2 and x minus 2. So we get x minus 2 squared equals 13. Which again, this is this. Before I can take the square root, I have to get rid of this 2 because this is 2 times the square root. So I'm going to divide it over. So now I have x minus 2 squared equals 13 over 2. That doesn't simplify. Now I can take the square root, which is x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 13. We're just going to leave that as is. And the last step is to add that 2 over. So I get x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 13 over 2. Okay, try to pause this video and try to do C on your own. Okay, hopefully you had time to pause this video. So let's go through C. You can check your work and see where you made a mistake, but hopefully you didn't. So this time, this is in the right form. What I need to do is move that 48x over here to the left. We'll do that by subtracting. Now we need to get rid of this coefficient. So we're going to factor out that 4. Leave some room. Okay, let's figure out what goes in this blank here. We're using b over 2 squared. My b is now -12. -12 divided by 2 is -6. And -6 squared is 36. Oops, and I made a mistake. What is my mistake here? Okay, what I do to one side, I do have to do to the other, but I'm adding way more than 36 here. This is actually 4 times 36, which is 114. Okay, that is a common mistake. Please be better than me. Okay, so now let's factor what's in here. What multiplies to positive 36 but adds up to a -12, and that's -6 and -6. So we have x minus 6 squared, and this is this. And that's going to equal 178. Before I take the square root, which I kind of could here because the square root of 4 is 2, but we're going to stick to what we've been doing and divide that over. So 178 right here divided by 4 is 4.44.5. You can either leave it that way. I have no problem with that at all, or hit math and change that to a fraction. We get 89 over 2, but I'm actually going to keep it as 44.5. That's way better to write than fractions. And now we will take the square root of both sides. Square root and square cancel, and left with x minus 6 equals, we have plus or minus the square root of 44.5, or plus or minus the square root of 89 over 2. And then lastly, add that 6 over. So we get x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 44.5.